And Megan, as a expert in those systems of care and those barriers to those systems of care more specifically, how would you add? What's the one takeaway you would give to families who are looking at young children going through this journey? And what would be your takeaway?
So, barriers I experienced personally is we don't believe children, right? We do not trust them to be authorities on their own body. They don't have autonomy, right? And it's a cultural thing of, I mean, it's how I was raised, and I'm sure it's how my parents were raised of toughen up, get out of bed, keep it going, push through, kind of a thing. And so sometimes I feel like the American culture itself is a barrier. I know I've expressed to people that sometimes it feels to have these conditions feels un-American, right? And that rugged individualism is not something that would ever be applied to me, right? And so you feel like you're bumping up against the culture at all times. The other thing is I was not believed, and it was scary because they immediately went to, you must be mentally ill. And then the power dynamics that come in, and the hovering, like almost sense of I could potentially lose my freedom if a doctor stepped in and said, we think you need to be hospitalized. Like there was that kind of, and there's a lot of patients, and I think that just kind of hovers in the back of your head in our community. It's interesting that the older I got, the more doctors were willing to believe me and take me seriously. And there's a bit of a stereotype that these kinds of conditions happen to middle-aged women, right? And so I hit another set of barriers of like, well, you're, middle-aged and you're stressed and you're, and it was a different stereotype. So there was that. I would say though, one of I've experienced personally, and I'm seeing it in long COVID community, what I don't think the public fully appreciates is that these conditions are a direct threat to your survival. So if you do not have a family who has resources, your food and shelter and ability to survive is constantly threatened.
The suicide rate is very high.
Well, yeah.
6 times the general population.
But it's to have that as a child, like I have never fully had the ability. So in my 20s, I didn't have a diagnosis and I kept trying to work, and I would go through cycles of being able to work and then crash and then be able to work and then crash. And I was just barely making it. And certainly not making it on my own. But I don't think people fully understand, like what scares me the most about these children coming up with long COVID is for the rest of their life, potentially, if we don't get them identified, diagnosed, and proper medical care, they will be struggling just to survive. And I think the other thing the public doesn't fully understand is that this is a trauma when you get an acquired illness like this. This is a trauma for these children. This is too much, too fast, and they don't have the ability to comprehend what is happening. Their family doesn't have the ability to comprehend what is happening. I mean, they don't understand what's going on inside their body. They don't understand why people are reacting to them the way they're reacting to them. So you've got the trauma coming from in, you've got the trauma coming from out. You've been pushed out of society. You have the direct threat to your survival needs. It is one of the most complex traumas a human being can go through, and there's no resources right now. Where do we send them? There are no qualified healthcare providers for mental health that have any understanding of what this is. And so even people who go to mental health providers end up quitting because they're saying, Megan, they don't get it. I can't just change my thoughts and it's all going to be okay. That's not going to feed me. And that's something I don't think the American public even understands. And I'm worried for these kids.